Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. For many years in my life, I worked in the jail and in the prison system. One of the first trainings I received was from a book called The Anatomy of a Setup. I believe that what God has given me for the coming year 2012 is directly related to that training I received. You see, in this book, it teaches you the roadblocks and the pitfalls and the potential dangers that lie ahead when working in that sort of environment. And the same is true with our lives. If we are prepared for the roadblocks, the pitfalls, and the dangers that are ahead, we are much more likely to come out without much harm. Let me explain. The anatomy of a setup goes something like this. You're in a jail or in a prison. Two inmates start arguing, and they get really loud and really obnoxious, and they start saying, very derogatory things to one another. And so you run to see what the problem is. And all the while, it's simply a setup. Because what they want to do is get your attention on them. And on the other end of the facility, someone is really getting hurt. Someone is really in danger. Now, because my focus and my attention is on the loud and obnoxious situation before me, if I'm not aware of my surroundings, and if I put my complete focus and attention on this situation, then I'm not able to go to the rescue of someone who is really in need. Then I'm not able to see that there are other things in my surrounding area. There are other things that are more important. Now, in my own personal life in 2011, I can see how the anatomy of a setup from the enemy of my soul was in operation. And if some of the things would have been told to me, some of the things that happened would have been told to me prior to them happening, I would not have believed it. But nevertheless, they happened, and it brought me to this point where I can say now, emphatically, that the anatomy of a setup is in full force from the enemy of our souls. And what he wants to do through that is to get our attention focused on one central theme, on one area of our lives, on one problem, on one particular situation, and get us focused in and honing in on that, and will not allow us to see what's going on in the bigger picture, what's going on around us. Doesn't allow us to see the blessings. Doesn't allow us to see perhaps even open doors that are elsewhere. Doesn't allow us to see, like the scripture says, that our light affliction is but for a moment. And it is producing in us a far more exceeding eternal weight and glory. You see, when we're focused in and honed in on this one particular problem or situation, we can't see the other things that are around us. And so that is a part of the anatomy of a setup, because we get stuck and we're unable to move forward. We're unable to move to the other places in life where God is intending us to move to. And so I say, for the coming year, for 2012, which is almost here, let's not be distracted because of the anatomy of a setup. Let's not be distracted by circumstances and situations that are in our face, and they sound so loud and so obnoxious, and they're ear pounding, and we can't seem to see past them. Let us not be distracted by them. Let us realize that it is an anatomy of a setup. Let us realize that there is a bigger picture, and not be distracted because perhaps you may have lost a house. Perhaps you may have lost a job. Perhaps things may not be going all that great as far as your finances and as far as debt. And perhaps things are just kind of out of sorts. Don't get distracted by those things. They're momentary. They're light affliction. And those things are the very things that are producing for us a far more exceeding eternal weight in glory. That's the bigger picture. And that's the part of God's plan. And let's not get distracted so that we cannot see God's plan, so that we cannot see God's blessings, so that we cannot see the other open doors that He has set before us. Remember, going into 2012, whatever this year has brought, whatever difficulties, whatever the trial, whatever the situation, remember, it was just an anatomy of a setup. It was just to get you distracted so that you couldn't see the bigger picture, so that you couldn't see the things that God really has for you. I titled this a prophetic word for 2012 because, like the training I received going into corrections, it was all about preparation. Right now we're in September, and so this year is almost over. What better time to prepare for what is coming in the following year? What better time to prepare than now? What better time to evaluate and assess what has happened in 2011? What better time to prepare for the things that are ahead, so that we won't be trapped and tricked by the anatomy of a setup?